right? It's like the gold rush, but better. Before we get started, I want to introduce, we've got our special guest. We've got Jarrett, and we also have Doug from the Jade House. And I guess since you've got your screen up, do you just want to get started with what the Jade House is about? And then Gene and I will look at it, provide feedback. Maybe we'll do a deal. Maybe we won't. We'll see how it goes.
Sure, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Good to talk with you today. My name is Jarrett Burke. I am CMO and president of Jade House Midwest, which encompasses anything essentially east of the Mississippi River, particularly Michigan, Illinois. We have operations in Michigan and Illinois today, looking at some other opportunities throughout the country. But in particular today, I will be addressing the funding rounds that we have going in the state of Michigan and the state of Nevada. I'll go through a little bit of the history and introduction to Jade House as a company, and I'll explain a little bit about how the company was formed, where we are at today, and where we are going. So without further ado, so New Age 2 LLC is the parent company in California. It was started in 2015 by myself, Ken, who's our president of New Age 2, and then we have Stephanie, who's our COO, and we have Aria, who is our president of our West Coast operations. So us four started the company in 2015. What we do really is we provide high quality concentrates to the recreational and medical markets in California. As I mentioned, we did get our start in California producing very high quality non-volatile and volatile types of products. So some of the products in the market that you could see today that we have would be our distillate pens, the half gram and full gram oil pens. We have the what are becoming known as the darts, which are essentially the syringes that you use to do dabs or to put on whatever your device of choice might be. We also have some innovative products such as our CBD and THC breath strips. So I'm sure you've seen the breath strips in the past. Listerine is a popular one. There's some others in the candy market that provide these dissolvable breath strips that go on underneath your tongue or in a sublingual manner. And we are putting those out in the California market today, in the Michigan market as well. For some of the CBD products that we're offering, and we plan on bringing this technology to a number of the other states that we're entering. As I mentioned, we're an industry leader in cannabis extraction and concentrate products. So we are adept at doing all different types of extractions. So they're in the market today. There's essentially 3 different types of extractions. There's pressurized, which would be similar to like a CO2 type of extraction. There is volatile, which would be similar to like a BHO or butane hash oil extraction. And then there is ethanol extraction, which would be similar to some of the distillate products that you see on the market today. And as I mentioned, we do all 3. So we got our start doing the volatile line in 2014, 2015. And today we handle all 3 depending on the market that we are in based on the different regulatory environment that we play in. A couple other side notes here. Our CBD line is being handled right now out of the state of Michigan. We've got some very talented engineers, infusion folks, chefs, people that are doing some very cool stuff with the CBD line that we have. I'm sure as some people may know on this call that with the recent passage of the hemp farm bill, has opened up the doors like a frenzy for some of these farmers, for some of these infused type of companies. Even companies such as like Coca-Cola came out and announced that they're doing an R&D project into developing a line of CBD products. So we are jumping full head in on the CBD line of products, and we're producing those here in the Midwest, and a lot of the IP that we hold within those CBD products lies within our Midwest operations here. Okay, so just kind of going through some of our growth numbers over the years. As I mentioned, our 2015 was our first year. We did about $250,000 in sales under the old Prop 215 market, which, as some of you are aware, is no longer viable in California. So we've transitioned over the Prop 64 market. In our existence, we've sold to hundreds of dispensaries, and obviously with the change in the Prop 215 market, moving over to Prop 64, there's very few of those Prop 215 dispensaries left, and we have our whole new set of dispensaries that we're selling to in California. In 2016, we secured an outsourced contract with one of the major growers, cultivars in the state of Illinois. It's a 3-year contract to provide all the intellectual property and services to do all their extraction. And it was a great success, and has been a great success for both parties involved in that contract. And just looking forward in 2018, 2019 here, towards the end of last year, what we did is we secured a volatile license in the city of Desert Hot Springs. We're in the midst of building out that facility. So essentially right now we have 3 facilities in California. We have 2 in the city of Maywood, and then we have that serve our non-volatile line, which is distillate, breast strips, and any of our distillate products, any of our breast stripped products. And then in Desert Hot Springs, which we expect to bring online here in the next 3 to 4 months, that will produce all of our volatile lines. So our shatters, our sauces, our diamonds, our the stuff that really is not in the market too much today in California, because there's very few of these Type 7 volatile licenses that are available, and we happen to have one of those. So as I mentioned, we have secured both of those licenses in the Prop 64 market. We did do a funding round last year for our California operations. In our existence, we've raised just south of $2 million. We raised 1.25 in our funding round last year that funded our Maywood operations. And then, as you can see, we have a number of growth opportunities here in the coming year. And the way that we like to handle these different states, in some cases it's a requirement where you have to have an entity formed within the state that you do business in. In some other cases, it just makes sense from a business standpoint, because we have other operators, we have other partners, we have other people in the deal that we need to account for. So we create separate entities that roll up underneath our parent. So these are entities that are that essentially the parent takes what we refer to as an IP royalty licensing stake in each of these different states, and then they're independently they're run by their overall organization, but we hire teams that are in some cases already operating within the state that maybe had a hard time getting a license or whatever the reason might be. We bring in some very talented people based on the geography, based on their skill set, based on how they can help us grow. Now, some of our differentiators, we really got out ahead of the game about 2.5 to 3 years ago. So we foresaw what the market was going to be. In 2015, end of 2015, I think, is probably really the early part of 2016 when the vote was happening. We got on board with our attorneys early, started doing all the legwork from a local municipality perspective that we needed to do in 2016 and 2017 to enable us to be in the position that we are today. I mean, I don't want to get into the time and the money and all of the resources that went into getting us compliant over the last 3 to 4 years, but it was a lot. It was very, very painstakingly process, a very painstaking process that we took, that we had to do to put us in the position we are today. And unfortunately for a number of our competitors, I mean, even some of these guys that are our friends, that we call our friends, that have had companies in the California market, are not operating today because they did not have that foresight. They did not have the vision that we did. And essentially, I mean, I think it all rolls back to our team, our attorneys, our accountants, the people that we have as advisors, really helped in the last couple of years and get us to the place where we are today. Our product is very, what we like to say is our product is a top shelf quality with a mid-shelf price, which, and our packaging is I mean, there's no one that has said they don't like our packaging. It's, in 9 times out of 10, it's the reason that we got shelf space is because of the packaging, the product, the pricing. A combination of all those three really puts us in a good place in the California market. We don't use any impurities as well. From our existence, we've never used any VG, PG, or PEG, which if those don't know what that is, that's vegetable glycerins, that's propylene glycol. That's the stuff that you don't really want to put into your body. All we use is food grade, fruit-based type terpenes, all natural, and that really sets us apart too, because you can really see it in the quality of the product when users consume it. So just running through some of our products here. This is the 3 that we have currently on the market today in California. We have our, as you see the pictures here, these are, the top picture there is our distillate darts, or our syringes. On the right, that's our carts, and in the bottom there is our sublingual strips. Yeah, and as I mentioned, the distillate syringes, these are very high potency THC distillate syringes. These test in the low 90% THC. And as I mentioned earlier, these products are primarily being used to put on dab rigs, to put on maybe joints, to put on bowls. People use it as an enhancer to existing, either can straight dab it or you can put it on an existing bowl.
Yeah, Jarrett, just a time check. Let's get this wrapped up in 5 minutes, because
sure. Yeah.
A lot of Q&A.
Sure. Let me just I'll roll through our products here. I think we went over those enough. Sauce is our BHO line. So let me just go right into our this is our financial needs. I'll go through financial needs of Nevada and financial needs of Michigan, and we can go from there. So in Nevada, as I mentioned before, we have a great opportunity here. We are in one of the largest parks in Nevada. One of the largest cannabis parks. It's a co-op park. We got into this relationship through a mutual friend of ours, someone that really likes our product, and has brought us into Nevada to operate as one of the only extractors in this large park. It's a 30-acre park that we are being brought into. So this is our needs within Nevada. And then here's our pro formas on Nevada. In terms of what we anticipate in the next 2 years. You guys can see June to December of this year, and then from all of 2020. And then in Michigan, a little less, because we're already operating in Michigan. We have a team. I think I mentioned I set up the team about 2 years ago in Michigan. We're operating as under the caregiver model, and we have a great guys over there. This is essentially what we're looking for, $2.5 million, and that will build out our facility, get our license, and have us producing these numbers within, these are some of our pro formas here for next 2 years. And I think that about does it. So questions are welcome.
Awesome. Hey,
yeah. So, or you want to go first, Gene, or?
Yeah, I just wanted to go really, really quick because I'm the amateur in the group that knows nothing about the CBD market at all. So just wanted to put that out there. So a couple of things that I have, you know, as far as like the audience go too, I would really like to see if you could find a way to kind of dumb it down for somebody like me that has no idea what most of these. I mean, normally when we talk tech, I'm a tech guy. I can understand everything. I know manufacturing and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Know nothing about this industry. So if there was just a way for you to maybe dumb it down a little bit for somebody like me that doesn't know the industry well, I think that would probably resonate a little bit better. Also, as far as just a couple tips and stuff in general, as far as the pitch goes, that I'd like to throw out there. Enthusiasm. I'd love to see some more enthusiasm, right? And just really having that, I think you could really do really well with that. I do.
Yeah, I mean, I actually kind of agree. I guess my questions, I know that.
Oh, Charles, I think we lost you for a second there. He locked up. We're waiting for him to come back on. I'll just tell you my other question I have then. So you're sort of you're selling
you know, other brands, because it seems like you did both, and I guess, like, and this goes with what Gene is. It's like you guys are doing a lot of things, and that's great, but I'm not sure what you guys fully do. You see what I mean? Like I've been thinking about that through most of the presentation, like trying to figure that out. So can you expand on that, Jarrett? Like, you guys are an extractor, but are you extracting for others, or are you extracting this just for yourselves and then you just sell through retail on that?
We do both. We started out with our retail brand, and that's really how people know us as Jade House. So we lead with Jade House. We have a number of, there's essentially 3 lines of our business that you can consider. So within those lines, we have our retail brand, which I went into in depth here. We have our wholesale orders, bulk orders, which are sold to other manufacturers within the state or within any of the other states that we operate. So that being, you know, if an edible manufacturer needs a couple liters of distillate, we'd be happy to sell them to it at the market rate that we have. And the third line of business is our services provider business. This is going into something similar to what we have in Illinois and setting up labs for other cultivators that need, that essentially need our IP, that need our intellectual property, that need our resources to set up these very advanced extraction equipments, and in some cases do toll processing for those folks. So those are the 3.
So you're consulting. Okay, so if I understand, and I apologize, I just want to make sure I understand. So I'm going to parrot it back for you. You are you guys build the extraction facility. You guys have built the extraction facility, and the primary vehicle is your own brand. And then because you've got the capacity there and there are other people that might need an extraction facility, you'll then sell wholesale to competitors, you know, your products to competitors for their brands. And then you also will do consulting for other people who want to build extraction facilities and everything on that front. Is that a pretty good summary of what you guys are doing?
Yeah, there would be, I would consider there's 2 separate, I would call separate divisions within the company. The first is our brand, as you mentioned, Jade House, our brand, selling the brand, getting the brand on as many shelves. And then there's our emerging markets. So emerging markets, let's see, if I go back up to our slide, let's see, where was it? Yeah, so emerging markets, you can see we're expanding, but we have feet on the street in a lot of these markets already that are, I mean, if you look at a market like Massachusetts, for example, Massachusetts does not have any talented extraction companies to speak of. If they do, they're already working with people. I mean, it's just the same way that Illinois was set up. When Illinois got set up 3 years ago, there was no one in the state that knew about supercritical fluid extraction. They didn't know anything about, you know, BHO extraction. So a lot of those companies here in Illinois and in Massachusetts today are going out and looking for people that know how to do this stuff, that in some cases we can charge a very high premium for, whether that's in a revenue share, which we like long-term revenue share contracts, or if it's in a one and done, you know, someone wants to pay us a couple $100,000 to come out and procure the equipment, set it all up, start doing some runs, teach them how to do it, do the knowledge transfer, and then we're gone. We have those relationships as well too. So there's essentially two types of business streams that we're getting. It's the branded, the wholesale bulk stuff, which is all primarily done out of California right now today. And then there's our emerging markets, which, as you can see in the slide, we have a number of emerging markets that's why we're raising funds. Let's get down to it right now. I mean, we are a successful company. We're not in the red. We have a strong brand. We're looking to grow like some of our competitors have grown. I'm sure some of you have seen in the market, or maybe you have not, but two good companies to look at that in Illinois that have gone public. I'm not saying that we're going public, but a good model to look at in terms of what they've done over the last 3 or 4 years is GTI and Cresco Labs. So those two companies essentially are doing exactly what have done exactly what we're doing today. And this is get your base in a couple states, which we have, and then really get out into these emerging markets, which really are much more profitable, can be much more profitable if you're in on the early stage. And that's what we aim to do with our funding round.
So can I ask a quick question to you? Like, just once again, as the guy that doesn't know a lot about the way the whole operations of this works, right? So can you, what prevents you from extracting in California and then selling it in Nevada? Is there?
No, there's all sorts of regulatory things and everything. Like currently, like if you grow flower, like Oregon has this like supply glut because you can't really just ship flower interstate or whatever. There's tracking things and all that. And I don't know the specific details on the extraction market, but I would imagine there are probably similarities where there's some sort of state-by-state type licensure process.
Correct. Yes. Every state, there's no interstate commerce available for any THC products over 0.3% THC in that product, which is why the hemp bill is such a big deal. So
but there's still like an umbrella company that sits on top of like that, right? Like for example, if I was to invest in California, like what would prevent you from taking some of the profits from the California operation and using them to build a facility in Nevada?
So let me just be clear. We're not raising money for California right now. We're raising money
that's what my question is though, right? So let's say that you're raising money for Nevada, right? So you build up this Nevada facility, it becomes this big, huge operation, right? And but then Massachusetts, you're opening that up, right? And it becomes successful. So if I'm investing in the Nevada operation, that's a whole separate entity than the Massachusetts. Is that right?
Correct. Yes, because we have different investors, we have different people that have put in their time, that have put in their whatever that might be in those specific areas. And because they're separate entities anyways. In Nevada, I have to have a separate entity. In Michigan, I have to have a separate entity. In Michigan, I built a whole team. So essentially New Age 2 LLC, which is the parent, owns, whatever, anywhere from 25 to 40% in any of these markets. The rest is owned by investors or people like me, the guys that have gone and actually set these states up and raise the money. And
so if you guys were to,
so there's a parent called New Edge, or what's it called, New Edge or New Wave, and they've got the core technology or the core processes and the IP.
Right, New Age 2 LLC is the entity.
New Age 2, and then there's Jade House. So Jade House is the consumer brand, or wait, that was done. So wait, Jade House started and then New Age 2 was made afterwards, or?
Correct. Jade House was started by the actual brand was started by Ari and Stephanie. New Age, which was me and Ken and I acquired Jade House as the brand and rolled everything up under New Age 2 LLC back in 2015.
Okay, so Jade House is part of New Age.
Correct. Yes.
Is Jade House 100% owned by New Age, or is there like a different party involved with Jade House? Or
Jade House is owned. The brand is owned 100%. All the intellectual property. You could kind of consider New Age 2 LLC as a intellectual property holding company, if you will. Okay, so we have a number of revenue generation activities going on throughout the country. in every one of those revenue generation opportunities, even though we may have not invested one dime into any of those, but we're still taking out 25% because we've essentially licensed our IP to any of these separate entities. In the case
okay, so you've got New Edge, and New Edge, the specific IP New Edge has is New Edge knows how to extract really well, and New Edge has a consumer brand where their extraction techniques are utilized in the local market of California, Michigan, and Illinois. Is that a pretty good understanding?
Correct. Yes. So it's
okay. And then what you're forming is, because of the various aspects of the market and everything, you know, you guys are today in California, Michigan, and Illinois, and you're saying, hey, I want to go after, I don't know, Pennsylvania or Florida or some other market. Or you've got these markets that you identified. So it's, you've got Las Vegas, New Jersey, New York, and Florida, and you're raising money so that you can create a subsidiary, call it New Age or Jade House,
Nevada. Yeah, New Age, right. You're right. You were right all the way up. Michigan actually is the reason we put Jade House has locations in Michigan is because we've been operating in that market under the medical caregiver. So it's already established. Right now, for those who are unfamiliar with the Michigan market, they recently passed recreational in the recent ballot. So as of, they're saying December 2019, recreational cannabis will be available throughout the state. I tend to think that that's going to be pushed back a little further. In order to make that transition from the medical market in Michigan, which we are today, to the commercial market, the commercial and the recreational, there's a licensing process. There's a lot of the same similar things that we've gone through in California. You have to go through in Michigan. Even if you've been operating for 10 years as a caregiver, it doesn't matter. You still, every company needs to go through the same process, which that's why we're raising money in Michigan, even though we have established the brand. And
okay, so let's use Michigan as an example, because that's what you're raising money for. So Michigan is some entity, and that entity licenses the intellectual property and call it consulting services or advisory services from New Age to the parent corp. And New Age 2 has some ownership percentage of the Michigan entity. Is that a fair statement?
Yes. Yes. Then, New Age owns 25% of the Michigan entity.
Okay. So and then in terms of employees in Michigan and the team and all that sort of stuff, there's some percentage. So like in your case, you know, you sound really, like, it sounds like you know your stuff. I don't know if you just present well or if you really know the stuff, but like, if I was in the Michigan side, I needed to like pick up the phone and say, Jared, I need some help to blah, 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 blah. You are actually a New Age employee, or are you also like on the payroll of Michigan, or how does that all come together?
No, there's any of the business that's being done in Michigan. For example, Doug is a director. He's our director of marketing in Michigan. What we did in Michigan is we had guys like Doug that have been putting in hours and, you know, relationships and bringing all sorts of stuff to the table for Jade House, Michigan, right? So what we did is we have our directors here in the Midwest. Any of the intellectual property that we're generating on our own, that doesn't have to do with California, meaning our CBD line, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, meaning some additional products that are not being offered in California today that we've developed here. For example, our edible line. I mean, we've brought on a very, very talented chef as a director to manage all of our edible lines. So while we are licensing that IP, there might be some IP that we're licensing in terms of the brand. I mean, for all intents and purposes, you can look at that brand and, you know, maybe a few pieces of IP that we're utilizing from New Age LLC in California. We're also building our own relationships, our own brands, our own sales, our own things in Michigan, because I've got a whole team of guys here in the Midwest that are drumming up business that, you know, so at the end of the day, we pay a royalty on any of our revenue, but that was that's the agreement that we have in a number of other states as it relates to new age and how we play in some of these states.
Yeah, while it sounds a little crazy, I've actually seen a structure kind of similar to this before, so I got to admit that.
No, I understand why that structure and stuff makes sense. I think, again, this is feedback, and we wouldn't be here looking at this if we weren't actually interested. There's like a presentation side, you know what I mean? That if you're presenting, I would have liked to have gotten through this because we're now 35 minutes in and I'm finally getting my head wrapped around what the heck you're actually asking for money for. Okay, so going back to Michigan, because let's just use Michigan as an example, so instead of hopping back and forth. So Michigan, you have an existing facility in play, you've got existing sales, you've got all that sort of stuff, and you're raising money to basically build better extraction so that you can sell more in Michigan because it's going recreational. Is that the understanding?
Correct. Yes. Michigan's a large state. We have opportunities to build labs.
And do you also have Illinois? Because I know Doug actually lives in Illinois. So do you also have? Yeah. Is it a separate facility in Illinois, or how does the licensure work? Or can Michigan ship to Illinois with extract?
No, I mean right now we actually have a lab doing CBDs as well in Illinois. So and that's all underneath the Michigan. When I say the, so let me. I know it gets a little confusing because there's multiple entities involved here, but in Illinois for the THC side for our subcontracting, that expires with our contractor. That expires in May of this year.
Wait, sorry, in Michigan or in Illinois?
In Illinois.
Okay, so in Illinois, you actually are basically white labeling or OEMing or you're wholesaling through a contractor who's doing the extraction for you.
We're actually subcontracted. So we're the subcontractor.
Oh, you're the okay, so someone else who says they're the extractor, they don't actually know how to do it.
Correct.
So they've hired you guys, you're behind the scenes actually doing the work while they've just done the sales or they've got the relationship to do the
Correct.
THC or the extraction on that side. Okay.
Correct.
Yes, Charles, we've been doing the extraction in Illinois for over 3 years for what is the largest grower in Illinois.
Not the largest grower, but a large grower in Illinois, and we've been contracted out to bring our intellectual property for a revenue share, just like we have in some other states as well. But we in Illinois that contract runs out here, and we've got other things that we're working on that I'm not going to disclose at this point, but we have our team in the Midwest is essentially all wrapped up under the Jade House Michigan LLC umbrella.
Okay, so Michigan doesn't just cover Michigan. Michigan covers now for extraction. What sort of regulatory licensure do you need? Because you're just a middleman, or not? You're not a middleman. You're just like a business-to-business subcontractor. Do you need like an extraction license to actually extract in Illinois or in Michigan or some of these other states? Is it on a state basis?
It's state.
Or are you saying you need the license to actually sell the retail side?
So in Illinois, it's different than a number of other states. In Illinois, it's a vertical market. So what that means is
you got to do everything from top to bottom. So in the Illinois case, you're writing someone else's license and you're just a subcontractor for, the other company.
Correct. In Illinois, we got brought in to bring our intellectual property for, we call it a brand licensing agreement or a toll processing agreement, whatever, I guess a combination of those.
Now, in Illinois, you don't have retail sales, or your retail sales is the vertically integrated guy is reselling your retail product.
Correct. We do not have the ability at this point today to have Jade House on the shelves, because everything has to be under, from a regulatory perspective, everything has to be under the umbrella, the brand of the
other guy, and he wants to promote his brand, he doesn't want to promote your brand.
Right.
So Jade House doesn't exist in Illinois, but in Michigan you have that license, so you can sell Jade House on a retail basis. Okay.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead, continue.
Yeah, so in Michigan, the same way that California was at the end of 2017, or all the way up until January 1st of 2018, operates under the caregiver model as of today. So the caregiver model is essentially, you know, you can do, I'm not going to go into all
yeah. I mean, we don't have to go into that. So, okay. So then you're raising money for Michigan to because in anticipation of the recreational rollout, so that then you guys have working capital. But you have an extraction facility already, so you're trying to expand that?
Yeah, what we're doing is we're as I was speaking to a little earlier, Michigan's a very large state. There's different geographies that we're in. I mean, what we're targeting anyways. Northern Michigan, the UP, the Lansing area, the Detroit area.
Okay, but that's for retail though, because from my understanding with extraction, you actually want everything in one spot because the bigger your facility is.
No, not necessarily. So in states like Michigan, where you have a large, I mean, you have, I think today there might be 3 testing, if that, and I could have gone up with some of the new licenses that have been issued, but there are very few testing labs. That's a big issue, right? So big issue for getting your stuff tested, quarantined, packaged correctly. All of those things kind of are taken into account when we're looking at the geography of where we're setting up. California, we don't have that problem. There's a ton of testing labs. There's retailers all the way up and down the state. You could pretty much have one manufacturing facility and service the whole.
So you're distributed because all of your products need some level of testing, and the current testing lab infrastructure in Michigan isn't sufficient to handle scale. Is that a fair?
Yeah, correct. And if I'm making stuff in Detroit and then have to drive it all the way up to the UP of Michigan, that's like a 9-10 hour drive, right? So why, and that's a lot of cost. I mean, the transport fees and when they Michigan,
that's crazy. So you would, but if you're making it, okay, so even if, but I guess, okay, so you're saying when you make it, you still don't want to transport it up.
Correct. And even more so to this point is the source of feedstock. So the source of trim and popcorn bud that we use to process all of our product. For me, if I've got a grower in Northern Michigan and he wants us to process his full lot of 100 pounds of trim that he's got, it doesn't make sense for him to say, okay, well, let me drive that 10 hours down to Detroit.
Okay, so you're doing that also for grower. Okay, so your extraction facilities, you're breaking up geographically to be closer to the growers.
Yeah, closer to the growers, closer to the retailers, closer to the testing labs. In Michigan, that is almost a requirement. If you want to operate in a place like Grand Rapids, you have to, more or less. I mean, you could make it work, but from an economic standpoint, it doesn't make sense. From a logistics standpoint, it doesn't make sense. So what we're doing is we're looking at strategic areas. We're already in Detroit. We've identified 3 or 4 areas that we've already are active in, that we already have feet on the street in terms of growers, in terms of labs, in terms of retailers that want to sell our product. But we need to build out that infrastructure. We need to apply for a license in every one of those facilities. We need to get the facility. We need to get the equipment, different equipment for each facility. We need to staff those facilities, which we can do. We can do rovers. We can do a rover extractor. That's not a problem. You know, a 1 week at one lab, next week at another lab. That's not an issue. But
no, so you put the machines and the people in a truck and just drive it around.
Nah, it's not. That's not.
I'm just curious what you meant by that. So.
Oh no, rover. I mean the actual resource, the actual extractor who goes. We would have the equipment stationary in each facility, just like we do in California. I mean, we have. Okay,
so you say rover, the human resource would be moving around.
Correct, like yeah. It's like we call them rovers, like extractors that aren't necessarily stationed at one facility, and they could go to any lab all around the country. Or we have, master extractors that sit at a lab all full time and they manage that lab. So
So now the CBD side, you're going to launch. Okay, so that's with the THC side of things. Now you're also with the Farm Bill going to launch a CBD product line, and in that case, you don't have those same levels of limitations outside of you have to be able to get your hemp seed from a spot. Now, is that going to be Michigan, or is that a different spot? Are you going to go to Kentucky or North Carolina because that's where they grow all that stuff? Or
actually, the 2018 Farm Bill legalized the production of hemp in all 50 states, also legalized the production of CBD in all 50 states, CBD oil. So that being said, I mean, this literally just got passed at the end of 2018. So I've been getting calls every other day from farmers around the country asking about CBD extraction, asking about how do I grow CBD? How do I grow hemp? What's the right strains that I grow? And so we're setting up a whole separate consulting side of our business for just CBD cultivation, extraction, business practices, setting up markets. I mean, there's a lot of the biggest question that a lot of these farmers have is, okay, great. I get it. I see the opportunity, but where do I sell this stuff? It's not like I can go to the CBOT and take out an option on hemp. I mean,
Cargill hasn't moved in yet.
No, Cargill is not buying those contracts. So, basically, how do I sell this stuff, and who do I sell it to, and for what price? So a lot of questions being asked, and we see it as a golden opportunity because we've been in this space for a couple of years now doing some of this stuff, and it's good timing for us.
Hey, Jared, can I ask a quick question too?
Sure.
So if I was to invest, for example, let's say in the Michigan is what you're raising for right now, right? So
Michigan and Nevada, correct.
Let's just choose Michigan as just an example, right? So if I was to invest in Michigan, for example, what would be like how would I get paid back? I mean, is it going to be dividends? Like, are you going to IPO, acquisition? Because the thing that's because of the structure, right? Who would IPO, for example, if you went public? Which organization would go public, for example, right? Since you don't have like a holding company that sort of holds all the other entities.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was to let's invest in, for example, the Michigan entity, how would I get paid back?
Sure.
I guess my question.
Yeah, sure. So right now we're doing convertible notes on our funding round. I can provide those documents to you guys. There's some other docs I can provide too in terms of in-depth financials and so forth that I get to you guys with an NDA. So I can provide you with that. In terms of the acquisition or the going public, or I mean, I don't want to really speak to some of those things at this point because they're a little bit sensitive to some of the discussions that we're having.
But I mean, my question is, right, since you don't have like one entity that would IPO, it's pretty unlikely that you would have all of your entities, in each city kind of go public, right?
Right.
Or to get acquired or whatever it is. So that's why I was trying to figure out like what that exit strategy really looks like. I know you're saying that you can't really discuss that in too much detail, but I think that's an important thing for an investor to understand would be like, how am I going to get paid back here? And it's just, and here's another thing too, right? So let's say you just mentioned like the consultancy part of it, right? So if you were to start doing this consultancy piece, like which entity would get paid for that, right? And then also because they're separate entities too, the other thing that's kind of concerning to me is
there's the whole billable side, right? Are you borrowing someone from California, or is there intercompany transfer pricing and all that? Yeah.
Yeah, well, because when you're consulting, you could have a consultant from anywhere, right? So who's getting credit for that? And then what if the New Age? I know New Age is kind of owned by you guys as well, but what if they decided to just pull out and give that IP? They didn't want to license it to, like, for example, Nevada anymore or Michigan anymore. Those are what my questions are as far as like the corporate structure works. The way that I've seen this work really well, I'm not telling you guys to change your structure at all, by the way, but the way I've seen this work really well, though, I'm on the board of an organization. It's about a $100 million a year kind of revenue. And the way it works is you have like a holding company, and just like I was kind of explaining, right? And you have all these, because it's also regulated by county actually. So you have all these other organizations that are sort of below it, but the main corporation, see what I mean? Like, is like, that's the main corporation, if you know what I mean, right? And the other ones are almost like their own DBAs. They're not, they're their own entities, but do you get what I'm saying? Like that feels a little cleaner to me. And I know that you said that New Age acquired Jade House, so you've already done an acquisition. So is there any, like, I guess, roadmap for at some point in time where you'd start sucking them all up under one single umbrella? Is that somewhere down the road kind of thing? That, because for me, it would make more sense to, like, look, I don't want to bet on Michigan, right? I want to bet on the company in general, right? I want to bet on Jade House, for example, right? I want to bet on, like, well, the Michigan's going to be a really good market. So just wondering if there's anything on the roadmap to kind of suck them up into like a single entity.
At some point in the future, there will be a buyout of one of the entities, and I'm not going to speak to any further on that. There will be a buyout, whether it's whether it's the Michigan entity buying out other entities, or whether it's what do they say, where the guppy swallows the whale, or the whale swallows the guppy, right? I get your concern, and there is, I've definitely heard that before, but right now we've already done fundraising in California, so there's no opportunities to invest in California, unless you want to do a debt round. We can do we could raise in a debt, but I don't think any of your investors or you guys are looking to do any debt round. What we're doing is we're building these separate entities to funnel into the larger entity. And yes, will we at some point get swallowed up by, or vice versa, acquire other companies? That's something that's in the roadmap. And I think that the IP that, if I could, once we get NDAs, I can share some of the IP that we are building here in the Midwest. And I think that, in other states, I'm not just saying the Midwest, out East, we have great IP that we're building out there as well. Same exact scenarios in some of these states where we have feet on the street guys that are building relationships, that are getting investors, that are selling product, that are funneling new opportunities into the company. So there is at some point there will be a consolidation activity. I can't tell you when or if that will even happen, but that is the generalized.
Okay, because that would make it, that would make it much cleaner, of course, right? When you were to, for example, go public, to have one company that goes
right.
all these other entities and things like that. So if that's on the roadmap, that that definitely puts some of the concerns at ease. So that's good.
Right.
I think just to jump in, and we're gonna have to probably get wrapped up pretty soon. You run into the challenge where, and Gene, you can concur, disagree with me. Like, I'm listening to you, I'm looking at like all these things that you're doing, and I'm like, this is awesome, right? You're a hustler, you raised some money, but you're bootstrapping, like, you're obviously very knowledgeable. But then as an investor, I get a little concerned because you're doing a little bit of everything, right? So it's like, oh, you're doing this and you're doing some consulting on the side, and then you're going to do this and you're doing that, and you're very opportunistic. And that's fine, but like, as an investor, I don't have the mind share, and B, I don't have the time to like if this was my only company and I was like watching and tracking everything that you were doing, that's fine. Mm-hmm. But like, as investors, asset allocation is the big thing. No investor should, like, if I've got, whether it's 10 grand, 100 grand, or $1 million, you shouldn't put $1 million into someone else's company if that's all the money you got, right? I will look at that and say, I've got my $1 million and I'll put, 50 grand in, 10 or 15 different companies. And the challenge of what it is here is, it's like, we're still, like, literally we're an hour in, and I'm still not like I kind of know what I'm investing in, but then I hear this and I hear that and I hear a bunch of things. So it creates a problem for an investor who just wants to say, hey, I want to write a check for whether it's 10 grand, 50 grand, or 100 grand, or if, because it seems like you're still at like an angel round and an institutional round, that's what you're going to get. They want to write that check. They want to get like some sort of a quarterly report of what's going on. They want to know where the metrics are, and they want to know, and what's the exit strategy of how I'm going to get my money back. I mean, like, that's how we look at things, when I'm investing. Now, I'm still interested in talking, but not I guess maybe it's as an investor, but it's more as like the entrepreneurial side in me, and that's only because I'm in the cannabis space. You know, that's where I will kind of go dig around. But like for someone like Gene, I mean, you can admit to yourself or not, or, you know, but like if you were looking at this and hey, I just wanted some exposure into cannabis or whatnot, I don't know, like, is this something that, like, isn't it a little complex, or it's going to be hard to get your head wrapped around?
It's a little complex, but keep in mind though, Jared, in this industry, I'm not that sophisticated in the cannabis at all, right? That space at all. So keep that in mind. So anything you hear from me, keep that in mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like back to the whole management company thing, really, or like a holding company / you could also call it like a management company almost too, right? The way that I've seen it work, the way we've done it is like each one, like for example, you would only have all your staff, all your stuff would be under, like, let's say it's all based in California. It doesn't matter where it's physically based, right? But it's like the New Age 2. And then Michigan, the Michigan entity would pay, you know, a portion, like all your salary. So for example, you're the CEO, I'm guessing, of each one of these entities. That's the other thing I don't really understand. But let's say that you're the CEO of New Age 2, right? So Michigan would pay you, maybe depending on the size of the organization, they'd pay you a quarter of it. And then, you know, Nevada would pay a quarter of your salary and all that kind of stuff. So the resource, as you can see, is much more efficient to do that way. You don't duplicate all these same things. Because the other thing is, I don't understand the management structure behind each one of these separate entities, and each, you know, are you the CEO? Are you running completely separate organizations in each state? That's the thing that's the reason why it's not just the cannabis piece of it. It's also that the structure of the business, the way that's kind of put together. And I know a lot of that, keep in mind, once again, I'm not that sophisticated when it comes to this stuff. I'm now understanding after talking to you guys, look, some of it has to be that way because of regulation. So I understand that. Mm-hmm. But I would imagine there should be some way to just make it a little cleaner, in my opinion. So any idea about, like, or any reason why you picked that structure instead of, like I said, like a management company that would basically share in all those expenses, so you know who the CEO is of all the organizations and not just one?
Yeah, we did that. We did it by geography because, well, number one, the structure. I'm chief marketing officer of the overall entity. Okay. I'm president and CEO of Jade House, Michigan. Reason being is because it's been all my money. It's been all my people's money. It's been all of my people's resources that has contributed to this. They don't own a dime of New Age 2 LLC. This is all stuff that we've bootstrapped from the ground up here in Michigan. Therefore, you know, we have different mind share here in the Midwest, that, you know, so it's not fair for either entity. It's not fair for our folks in California to say, oh, here, let's just give these guys a bunch of equity, even though, you know, what they've done up till this point is essentially created, you know, a company in the Midwest and have been doing all this work on their own. I mean, that wasn't not offered anyways. That was not an option for any of my investors here in the Midwest,
but wouldn't it be
Doug. So
raising another round for the main entity, so it's still just, they just got in earlier because they were in California. You see what I mean? And it would just be like any company when they expand. Like one of my companies is in 9 countries, right? And it's like all of the organization's money still comes into the same, you know, main entity there. So that's that. I get what you're saying though. I get what you're saying because of the regulations and things like that. So
yeah, and hey, I would love for someone to convince our team out west to give my guys equity here. That would solve all their problems, but that's not going to happen, and we're doing just fine here in the Midwest.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess, you know, to conclude, and let's get this wrapped up. Love what you're doing. I think it's really cool. Want to have, I guess, more of an entrepreneurial, opportunistic type conversation, because it just so happens that, you know, I'm based in Chicago and we have a lot of, you know, things in play, and especially with CBD, it becomes a little more interesting. So we're definitely interested in that conversation. I think from an investment side, I'm going to pass on this as is, because the structure is just really, like, I just can't wrap my head in a reasonable way, especially because I have to look at this as, like, you know, I'm in a bunch of these different companies, and I just can't keep track in terms of all the things you've got going on. So.
Okay.
All right, Jared. I don't know, Gene, any final words or?
Yeah, I agree though, Jared. A really good presentation, I thought overall. The only thing, like I said, that I'd like to see is maybe if you could just maybe, you know, think about like, you know, like I understand that the investors in California, they don't want to, you know, they want to kind of keep it within California, whatever.
No, or maybe you don't even bring up California. You just say, hey, you know, we're Michigan. We've licensed this from them. They own this. That's just what it is. They're in the cap table. And this is what we're doing in Michigan. Because like that almost confuses things, if that makes any sense.
I think that makes a lot more sense. Yeah, maybe if you only pitch Michigan, forget about California, forget about all the other entities. Like we're just doing this organization in Michigan. We have a track record because we've started this other company before, right? So since they are technically different entities, just say like, hey, this is what company we've started. Now we're doing a similar company in Michigan. I think if you pitched it like that, I think it would really go over pretty well.
Okay, great. I appreciate the feedback.
Awesome.
Alrighty.
All right.
Well,
thanks, guys. Have a great day.
For everything. Talk